Welcome, everybody, to Tips from My Garage podcast. My name is Lisiate Tonga. I'm a recovering addict, a father of two boys, husband to a beautiful wife, and an author and a business owner. And I want to talk to you today, one last time, before the election, about the reasons why. Actually, not the reasons why you should vote for Trump, but I just want to give you some facts in the hopes that I can convince you or persuade you to think critically and to see things with logical thinking and with common sense. So I want to go hard in the paint one more time leading up to the election. And I want to preface it with this. I want to say that before I go into the different points that I have planned to discuss, I want you to put your emotions aside for this episode and just try to think critically and look at things from a logical, common sense perspective and just look at the facts. I might also say that whoever you vote for is your prerogative and your right, and you should exercise your right however you want to exercise it. But I just want to use this platform at this time to see if I can make some sense to you so that you might be able to think or see things more clearly and have discernment going into this election if you haven't yet voted. I'm sure that most people are made up in their minds about who they want to vote for, and perhaps a great number of you have already voted, but I just want to share with you some of my own thoughts, and however you take it is however you take it. So the two things that I wanted, well, the first 2 points I want to talk about are the deficiencies within the current administration. And these are just my own opinions. I might, it might be the opinion of many other people as well, but this has come from my own observations and what I see from the actions that have been taken, the consequences of those actions, and the results of what has happened as well. So I believe that the two deficiencies the current administration have is that they're number one, incompetent, and number two, they are out of touch with the needs of the people, of the American people. I want to point that out in a couple different ways. The first one, there are many ways that you can point this out, but I'm just going to use a couple simple ones to show you what I'm talking about or how I came to this conclusion. So the first one would be that this current administration had let in millions and millions of illegal immigrants into the country. Now, I am not opposed to immigrants, people migrating into the US to take advantage of the opportunities that are there. My family are migrants. My parents both migrated to the US and brought us along with them. They are from different countries, but they followed the process that was laid out for them, and they did it the right way. And it took some time, but they still us they have and our family have been able to reap the benefits of those opportunities. And we wish for everybody that wants to come to the United States to have those same opportunities and rights that will help them to become who they want to become. And so with letting in thousands of illegal immigrants, and the reason that I think that this is incompetent is because most of them were not vetted, and a lot of those that weren't vetted were thousands of criminals, including convicted murderers and convicted rapists. And when you have people that are convicted criminals coming into a country where you don't know where they're going or where they're settling, this then becomes a threat to the citizens of the United States. And you can already see there have been numbers of a number of different incidents and stories of people being killed and murdered because of illegal immigrants that have been brought into the country. and and so this is a very sad case, and you you would imagine that that will continue to happen, and it might come to a city near you. It might be in your city. You might know somebody that has been affected by these bad policies, but that is incompetent. And as a result of that incompetence and a large number of illegal immigrants coming into the country, is you have a lot of taxpayer dollars that have to, and a lot of the country's resources that are going towards these illegal immigrants, to place them, to house them, to find them a place to live. And these things cost money. And so what that does is it sucks up resources that should be going towards the citizens of the United States. And then the citizens of the United States then take a back seat because there is a priority to make sure that everybody that comes into the country illegally is situated and has what they need. And so you've got resources that are going towards these illegal immigrants, and then you have the American people, which are taking a back seat, that are put on the back burner, and are and their needs are put on the back burner as well, and they go down the ladder of the priority. And not only that, the citizens of the United States have also become unsafe because you have a lot of criminals that are now in the country, settling in different places, committing different crimes in different cities, taking over different cities, apartment complexes and such. And this then becomes problematic for the communities, the local communities. Maybe you're in one of these communities, but that makes your neighborhoods unsafe. And so that is a that is incompetent. That you can put that down to the incompetence of the current administration. The other thing is that the majority of Americans don't want to be involved in these overseas wars that we have. And what happens when our country gets involved with these wars? We become involved even with if we don't want to become involved. If we are an ally to one, then we become an enemy to another. So this is not a good thing, especially if it's something that we don't really need to poke our nose into. And not only poke our nose into, but we end up funding. So what the current administration is doing is they're sending billions and billions of dollars to the Ukraine and to Israel and to all these other countries to support their war efforts. And this is money that we don't actually have to give them because we're something like $35 trillion in debt. And so the only way that we can send money overseas is by using taxpayer dollars, hiking the taxes, creating more taxes, and also printing more money. And so we print more money, we raise the taxes, or we use our taxpayer dollars to fund these wars overseas. And really, the only people that are disadvantaged from this are actually the American people. The American people now have less resources to look after their own needs. And so that's one reason why I think that the current administration is out of touch with the needs of the American people. They're more interested in the wars that are going overseas and sending and supporting countries overseas than they are about their own people. And it's incompetent. It's not what the government should be doing. The government's first priority should be to look after its own citizens, to protect their own citizens, and to protect the citizens' individual rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the current administration is doing neither. They are creating a more unsafe environment, not just in the United States, but also globally. And it's ruffling feathers of different nations. It's stirring the hornet's nest. It's making things very unsafe. There's a lot of anxiety and fear happening globally, and the US is making a lot of enemies in the process, and they are currently, the overseas governments are looking at our current administration as also incompetent and weak, and incompetent in that they don't know what they're doing, and so they are taking liberties to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. We need people in the government that are going to create peace through strength. And that's what I believe the Trump administration is going to do. There are three things that the current government is doing. The first thing they're doing is they're pushing for no voter ID. The second thing they're doing is they're pushing hateful rhetoric. And the third thing they're doing is they're invading our individual rights to our bodies. And I want to talk about these three individual things separately. And the first thing about pushing no voter ID, I think it's crazy that you have to have a license to be able to do anything. You need to be able to have ID to get a house, to buy a car, to go to school, to be able to do everything, to buy alcohol, to go on a plane, to do everything you need an ID. But when it comes down to voting, they're trying to put in hard hard rules and laws that are going to block that off so that you don't have to have a voter ID in order for you to vote. And so what that actually does is that would allow people that don't belong to our country to be able to have an effect on the election and the administrations that are going to be, who are supposed to be looking after the people. And so you have to think about that critically. You have to sit back and think and wonder, why are they doing that? What other reason would you have to have a law that says there's no voter, there's no one has to have an ID to vote, except for to draw the conclusion that that's they need to cheat. They need other people to be able to vote that don't belong to this country to affect the outcomes. How can you draw any other conclusion than that? So if you were just to think critically about that, what other reason is there? And I think that I heard Kamala Harris talk about this once. She said that, we need to get rid of, we need to have everyone be able to vote. Not everyone is going to be able to have an ID to vote. Like, you go into rural places and they don't have a Xerox or something like that, where they can't print off an ID or something to that effect. Like, really? In this day and age, there's no Xerox machines that in rural areas. There's no. It's almost like these people. She's saying that there are people that are living so archaically, like back in the Stone Age days, that they can't they can't vote properly. So we have to get rid of the law that everyone has to have a citizenship to vote or an ID to vote. And I think that's preposterous, but you have to think about that critically. The other thing, they're pushing a hateful rhetoric. And just recently, Kamala Harris has gone on to say that Trump is trying to be like Adolf Hitler. And then you got MSNBC that is driving the same rhetoric. And you have all of these mainstream media outlets that are portraying Trump as Adolf Hitler, and that these rallies that he's having are like Nazi rallies that they used to have back in the old days. And so you have to ask yourself or wonder why can't why if the mainstream media, if their job is to provide objective information, why aren't they talking about the policies that Trump is trying to enforce, like having safer borders for the country, lowering the cost for American people, getting out of the wars overseas? Why don't they focus on on the policies that Kamala Harris has? And I'll tell you why. Is because they are banking on their voters to be so emotionally charged with fear and with hate that they cannot think critically, that their common sense goes out the window, that there's no logical thinking, that they just have to hate Trump so much that they're going to vote for whatever the alternative is. And what the Party get to do is they get a free pass from those voters on having to explain in greater detail the specifics about their policies. And so they can just use words, empty words, word salads, words like democracy, words like joy and freedom, and turn the page, and not really get specific about what their policies are. And so the danger in that is that because we don't really understand their policies, we don't really know what they're going to be doing once they get into office. And you've got to be really concerned about that. You can't have a campaign where the whole campaign is about hate the other guy. The other guy is so bad that you have to vote for us, and them not be able to explain themselves for the reasons why you should vote for them. And the policies need to be put under a microscope so that the individual voter, the citizen, can see how fundamentally sound or not that these policies are. They need to know what the policies are going to be, but they don't. They put their policies as a second priority. They're banking on everyone hating Trump to get into office. And you can see how desperate it's becoming now, because they are now just calling Trump and all of his followers Nazis. And so you have to wonder why has it come to a point now where it's so desperate that now you have to call other American, not just Trump, but all the Trump followers or people that are going to be voting for Trump, calling them Nazis as well. That's half the nation, maybe even more. Really, like, you really do think that everybody is trying to, that half the country are Nazis? This is ridiculous. The whole intent and purpose for that is to get you so emotionally high that you don't see what the real policies are. You can't see the specifics about them. They glaze over them. They're vague. They're very basic. They are they're they are not scrutinized. They're not dissected. They're not pulled apart so that you can see what potentially that means to the American people, for good or for worse. We cannot, and you cannot, afford to allow an administration to come to power without being able to identify the specifics of the policies that are going to affect you for the next 4 years. Because if they're anything like the last 4 years and nothing really changes, and all you've done is hated Trump, and then you've got another 4 years of what you guys just went through, it's going to be a really tough slog. It's going to be really rough. and the citizens of the United States will become second-rate citizens to everything else. And so I want to talk lastly about the invading of our individual rights to our bodies. I think the government has been given far too much power to over our bodies, which are personal and individual. And no one should be telling us what to put into our bodies or what to do with our bodies, except for us. And so I was completely against the forcing of vaccines during the COVID administration. But where I live here in Australia, if we didn't get the vaccines, then we were going to lose our jobs. And even though on principle, like I guess on principle, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it. The only reason, and I think I mentioned this before, is that the reason I got vaccinated was because the leader of our church encouraged us to do so for our own personal safety from infection. And so that is the only reason why I did it personally. But I've got two kids, and I've watched my kids get needle after needle after needle. And I talk to my wife about this a lot, and I say, why do our kids have to have so many vaccines? And the conversations we have can get heated. I always say, look, we don't even know what these vaccines are doing. Our older son has a peanut allergy. Like, we've never heard of this stuff. Like, back in, like, none of us had allergies like that back in the old days. But the number of needles that they have to get from before the age of 1 years old is crazy. And then the needles that they have to get after that, and we just don't even question it. And I wonder, why are we doing that? And one thing that I really loved about RFK Jr., and the reason why I love him being part of the Trump administration, is because he's going to shed more light on that. He's going to make these companies become more transparent with the vaccines that they have. So then you can see the efficacies of these vaccines. You can see the pros and the cons of these vaccines. And I think that the more information that we have about vaccines, the better the decision we can make about whether our children should have it or not, rather than just getting the vaccine just because that's what everyone else is doing, just because that's what I got when I was growing up. We should have all the information that we need to make the best decisions for our children and our children's children, rather than just blindly accepting what everyone else is doing. And the other thing is that the biggest beneficiary of this is the big pharma. Those guys are the ones that are making millions and millions of dollars over these vaccines. So do they want any of us to stop? No, they don't want any of us to stop taking the vaccines, because then they're going to start losing money, and they don't want to do that. The other thing that the government is doing is that they're poisoning our foods with chemicals like pesticides and other addictive ingredients that aren't even allowed in illegal countries, and we don't even know about it. The foods that we have on our shelves have ingredients in it that are not even allowed in other countries, even as close as Canada. Like, why are we allowed, why are we poisoning our children? And you have to wonder that. You have to think about that. Why are there more addictive ingredients in our foods than there ever has been before? And you could think that you can play that movie out and say, hey, well, if my kids are more addictive, then or more addicted to the foods that they're eating, then they're going to continue to eat the junk foods that they're eating. And that is what's going to create the other health issues that come from having these sort of poisons in our bodies for years and years and years. And so I think it's important for us to have people that are a part of administration that's going to shed light on the dark corners of the of big pharma, of these companies, these companies that are allowed to put these types of ingredients in these foods, because we do have a problem with our health. especially with things like obesity and even in children. Like the U.S. is one of the most unhealthy countries in the entire world, and it's the most wealthiest country in the world. And you have to wonder, well, how is that possible? How can you be the most wealthy country in the world with the most unhealthy people? And I guess the last point that I wanted to make about the invading of individual rights to our bodies is I want to talk about abortion. And I know that that is a little bit of a that's a really touchy subject, but it is something that till now the government has had control over, and the government is the one telling the people or making the laws on behalf of people's bodies. And I don't think that that's right. And Trump also said that he never said that he was going to get rid of abortion. What he did say is that it's not the government's place to say who can have abortions or not have abortions, and that power should be returned to the states, and then we the people should be voting on that, and that's as it should be. The people should be the ones to say what they want to do with their bodies, not the government. When the government has an overreach like that, especially over something so personal and individual, it allows them the powers to do other things on a more personal and individual level, to encroach on those rights that we have. And that is a slippery slope. When you open Pandora's box, everything comes out. It only needs one thing to come out of Pandora's box, and then the whole thing is open. What we don't want is a all powerful government that's going to make every decision on behalf of the people in the name of safety and protection of the people, because they do neither. The only things that happen when the government has more power is it becomes more tyrannical, and they become more power hungry. They become more controlling, and they, at the end of the day, don't keep us more safe and protected. When a government says to you that they are going to keep you safe, they want to make things more secure for you. The only thing that you have to do is give up some of your freedoms in order for you to do that. That is when you know the government wants to get bigger and is a tyrannical government. They want more power. And the thing about power in the government, and when the government gets too big and they have more control, more and more control, because we the people are giving them more control, because we say, okay, we want you to protect us, we want you to give us all of these handouts, and the government promises, oh, we'll hand out this, we'll give you this, we'll give you this, in the name of keeping you safe and secure. They end up doing neither. They end up just getting more and more powers. And the thing about the powers, once the government has these powers, it's harder for them to relinquish the powers once they have it. And this is a dangerous place, because if a government won't relinquish the powers, the only alternative and way for them, for the people to get the power back from them, is civil unrest. That's the only way to do it. That's why it's so important to keep the government small. The government should do two things. They need to protect us as a people, and they also need to protect our individual rights and give us the opportunities that we have to live, the right to life, to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the pursuit of happiness isn't guaranteed. It's not something that is given to you. It's the pursuit. It's the opportunity to go for it, to make the most of your life. The government cannot give you happiness. They cannot give you wealth. They only should be able to provide those opportunities for you to make the most of it. And so that's my piece, really. I want you to think critically about what's at hand here. a vote for Trump isn't just a vote for Trump. It's a vote for RF Kennedy, who is going to make America healthy again. It's a vote for Tulsi Gabbard. These are people that are fundamentally sound in the Constitution of the United States, that are battle tested, that will put their own livelihoods on the line to ensure that we, the people, have the freedoms that we have to be able to be prosperous, to live the lives that we want to live, but also to be protected and to be healthy. Who doesn't want that? The alternative is Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. What is that combination? What is that combination going to give you for another 4 years, based on what you guys are seeing, and not only seeing, but the what they have done over a 4 year period. So think critically, put your emotions aside, weigh the pros and cons out, look at the facts, and then make your decisions based on that.